Thank you very much for this generous introduction. So today the topic of the discussions is aesthetics, looking good. Can you hear me well? Yes. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few things, starting with a bit of where we come from, Greece. Greece is a very particular place, a very particular culture, and it has greatly influenced the way we design and the way we are as architects. Greece is about a lot of things. Greece is about time, it's about unfinished, it's about, it's about recycling, it's about adaptation, it's about permanent movement. So architecture as a concept is very different to things we often refer to when we're having discussions in Northern Europe, for example. Also, Greece is a lot about improvisation, about anonymous, about economical solutions, about randomness, about chance, about adapting to things found. And also it's about informality, in fact, formlessness. One can easily claim that architecture in Greece doesn't have a form, doesn't have a shape. So it's kind of lacking the autonomy we often associate with architecture. So these are all ideas and images and situations that we're completely familiarized with and we kind of appreciate, and they influence a lot the way we do architecture. This is a summary of some of the urban projects we have done for our city, Athens, where we're partly addressing the issues I just mentioned to you. For example, lack of form. So how can you formulate the city, for example, in Greece? Could it be maybe through landscape? Could it be through nature? It's about adaptation, using things found, things available. It's about program, about people, about improvisation again, etc. And it's work that is expanding or developing in all scales. So from city to building or typology to object, like in the circular playground. And sometimes it goes down to elements or mixing the scales. It's a moment that we particularly enjoy, where the scale of the city merges in a project or an idea with a scale of elements, as for example in this project to the left, which talks about Athens only through its doors and balconies and windows and things like that. Or also in other cases, in other places, this was about Barcelona and its courtyards. So I'm going to show you 3 chapters. Always thinking about looking good, about the question of aesthetics, about the question of beauty. The first one is interiors or city in our thinking. Again, starting with a reminder of Greece, the starting point, space in Greece again. So it's some of the images that we really enjoy. The first one is Christian ceremony, where you see that architecture is just capitalizing on things that are just there, like the pier, the fishing boat, but then also the landscape and the horizon. To the right is a typical Greek island interior, where what you see is that the room is a house, the house is a room, and functions overlap, we architects would say. So the bedroom, the storage, the dining room, the kitchen, display and storage, everything is kind of happening together in extreme density, cross-programming, we sometimes call it. And of course, it's never the decision of an architect, right? And this is also a very interesting image, is from the time of the financial crisis. It's a wedding happening in a gas station. So again, it's about adaptation, the art of adaptation, as we call it. And the last one here is an image that's interesting because it's about mistakes. imperfection. It's one of the not typical. It's one of the most known traditional taverns in Athens. So it's an old restaurant, but it's a fantastic place, but it defies all rules. So, for example, the door is just on one of the steps, and then the stair hits the counter, etc., etc. So it's a fantastic original space, very functional, but actually it kind of defies everything one expects as correct. So I'm jumping onto some of our own work to again think about these questions of aesthetics, looking good, what we're looking for. To the left side, you see the previous condition of the place. So it's a miserable, typical apartment with a corridor in the middle and rooms around. So you don't have far views, you don't have light, and you don't have communication between the spaces. And to the right is the project, which kind of inverts that situation, creating an environment, a little city where you have communication with what is happening around. So a key move for that was, for example, opening up the kitchen and making it like a little captain room in the center. So in this situation, there's not many walls. There's other things to limit spaces and functions. And materiality plays also a big role. So these are something I wanted to talk to you about today is plans. These are projects that are mostly solved in a plan. So in a plan comes the organization and the materiality. So aesthetics are already present through that, and then the rest kind of comes afterwards. Another example, Nadia apartment. It's on 2 levels. Similar situation with a corridor and doors and walls around. It's for a family of 5. So in the project, again, we kind of made an environment for the family to interact more, so more of a social space. And again, one improvises how he uses the space. So there's a lot of flexibility and negotiation. It's about Greek space, what I showed you in the beginning. Just some details from the various bedrooms. So also talking or thinking about aesthetics, the process we use when we design, it's again, I think, perhaps coming from the Greek culture, the Greek way of thinking about space that I mentioned to you earlier. It's not about having a fixed or finished or complete idea about the result. It's about negotiation. It's about relationships. So the way we design is orchestrating, thinking about relationships between various things. So it's a more open, flexible, changing situation. Remember the Acropolis image at the beginning, where things come along, and then what we care for is how these things relate to each other. And so this process uses a bit contradictory methods or opposite methods, from very free and instinctive to very systematic, like catalogs of things put in relation. Just some images of some of the details, because there's a very rich result that comes out of this process, which is also unexpected for us too. Another example to the left is, you see the previous condition, it was a basement, a storage, unfinished before. The very difficult space because the light was only coming from one side. And they asked us to turn this into an apartment. It's 55 square meters, and so the result is a similar case where it's again a space, an open space, an open plan, very flexible, that allows the light to penetrate everywhere, and the views, of course, etc., etc. Now, what's to me very interesting is that sometimes ideas that are born in these projects, which are to a large extent made with recycled materials, is that there's particular qualities that come out that sometimes become mirror projects. So this one is called the frieze. It's a frieze, like the Parthenon frieze, but made with materials that were used in the apartment I just showed you, the basement. Because this is where we buy, this is our favorite shop where we buy materials. It's a shop without electricity. It's a former garage that an old man has. And so he has stacked things from decades, and then we go with a torch and we discover things. And it's a really fascinating process, a very Greek process, I would say. It's again about improvisation and all that. Sorry. Another example, this one's a bigger case. It's an apartment of 135 square meters. So the situation here is that it's the apartment is built around the building shaft. So this is a closed box initially with small windows for toilets and kitchen. So again, it's a kind of dead-end circulation, and we opened up and inverted that condition. We opened big windows to the shaft, and so now you have, again, the whole depth of the apartment revealed to you. And again, you see there's not much walls, so things are placed like objects. So this is the shaft before, and this is the shaft now that you can completely open up in the summer, so it's also creates a cross ventilation that's incredible. There's many cases. We've done a lot of residential projects that all share similar principles, like the ones I've been mentioning to you. And I think these projects are maybe more easy to look at and look at the aesthetics and maybe appreciate them. But what I'm trying to explain today is that the aesthetics is not a goal at all. It's the program, it's the plan, it's the way that light circulates in the space, it's the depth of views, it's the making of a social space, of the circumstances for a family, for example, to always be in relation that we care about. And the aesthetics kind of happens afterwards. So the way things happen is really about that. In this apartment, we opened up a big hole in the center to allow views to the sea to arrive and the light to come through, because at first you could only see the view and get the light from the front. Another one, now this one's a kind of extreme case, and I thought it's interesting to include it because it's extremely small, so it's a kind of radical case. It's on a rooftop, so on the top of a building there used to be this situation, 4 columns and a slab. It's 22 square meters, so it's roughly a room. It's 4 by 5 meters about. And we were asked to make this a house. So what we did was the opposite of keeping it empty to feel big. We divided the room in 5 rooms, actually 4 rooms and a corridor. And we arrived to this situation where the trick is that you don't see where the space finishes anymore. So there's a lot of tricks played with your mind, with your perception of space, and that has to do with aesthetics. It has to do with hyperdensity, for example, because your brain reads this as something much larger than what it actually is, because of the richness of materials and details and all that. There's other mechanisms employed as well. For example, the facade completely disappears. It slides away. So you don't see where the external border of the space is. And there's been some cases of more vernacular buildings that we transformed, in which cases usually it's elements that we pick and highlight. For example, this is a house on Kimolos Island, very small, 30 square meters each floor, and this one's a house in the Peloponnese, where specific things found. For example, this space under the veranda became the most interesting additional apartment, in fact, 30 square meters, complete with its own kitchen, or the stables for the horses. The whole ground floor was for animals, so it became the kids' area, fascinating. And then there were elements again introduced on the main floor typical Greek situations. For example, this is the day bed that used to be next to the grandmother cooking. The kids would sit there and nap and all that. Or here's a house in Montreal, similar techniques, opening up the space, allowing views and communication for the children and the parents, highlighting found elements like this hidden original fireplace. Okay, I'm jumping to the second chapter, which is one case, the Petralona house. It happens to be our house. It's an interesting project to talk about today under the theme of aesthetics or looking good, especially because of the way it was built, the process of its construction. So this is originally the house. There used to be a house, one floor, really strange, difficult plot because the neighbors are really close, so there's no privacy. And this is the original floor plan, the typical case with a corridor and just rooms around. And this is the result to the right, where we added 2 floors, a very small middle one and a bigger upper one. And the house, this one, it was built during the financial crisis, so it's made up of things found and from junkyards, from sponsorships, from other buildings collected from the streets, etc., etc. So it's, I remind you again, the Greek space introduction I was talking to you about. It's a project that kind of really happened following things that were there, conditions. So it's a kind of accumulation of spaces, actually. To us, it's not really a house. It's a small neighborhood, a small urban fragment. And in fact, it follows the old Athenian house type, which used to be around an open courtyard. So the house actually was very small. It was just the private rooms, and everything else, daily life, was happening outside, and it was a shared experience. So it's kind of mimicking that process. That's why there's also a hole in the center and a tree planted right at the middle. So I'm gonna maybe walk you through. This slide, I was thinking, really reminds me of a lot of the things discussed in the morning panel. As you see, of course, there's other things about the project and the architecture we do and the aesthetics that come out of it, which has to do with the history of architecture, of course, with ideas. It has to do with density as well, intellectual density. There's a number of references just in an image like this that I can talk about. For example, this is a largely Frank Lloyd Wright. This is Alvar Aalto. This is the zebra concrete. This is the Rietveld door. This is Sotsas worms. This is also the Greek archipelago, but then this is a specific island, and this is the original window of the house that was there, the actual piece. So when you enter, you are in a kind of Rochamp, very small scale entrance space, and then you arrive to this grandiose 11-meter high living room, which you don't perceive as a closed space because the roof is too far up and it has this shape for the light to pass through, etc. So as you see, the general experience of the house is it's felt as an extension of the garden. That's the main thing about it. It opens up in many ways, and actually the borders to the outside are very playful and rich. This is also a point for aesthetics that we are discussing today. So to us, this is what we're trying to achieve. If you're talking about aesthetics, it's about playfulness, it's about richness, it's about adaptation. So there's functional reasons for how things work. For example, here there's no column and there's nothing in the corner to open up diagonally, or this window is broken in pieces that can be pushed and hidden inside the wall there, etc. So there's reasons for how things look, and that's what's fascinating to us. As you move through the house, you discover very different experiences relating to, especially to context, to orientation. So the upper floor is sunset, for example, is the only place where you see the horizon and the sunset. And as I briefly mentioned, there's the whole form. I claimed in the beginning that Greek architecture is kind of, at the moment, is kind of formless or informal. What happens is that form is just made by conditions. So, for example, this particular form of the curve is because this is the way to allow the sun to reach the back of the house, the veranda. The same with this big void in the front. There's this cantilever, which is to allow the sun to come through it. And talking about the process again, and about adaptation, and about Greek, kind of Greek space, the making of Greek space. This is a typical image of a junkyard in Greece. It's our favorite places. You discover really amazing treasures, handmade, really good quality, extremely cheap. So this is where we shop. Typically, it's a process that we learned in the financial crisis. It was the only way for us actually to do architecture, so it's not something we thought about. It just kind of appeared as the only solution. These are the doors that we used in our Petralona house, the house you just saw. It's the only 3 doors the house has, actually, internal doors, and it's the ones we found in the street in front of our office. During the crisis, our office looked like a junkyard, so we were collecting things from all over the city, and so we were dismantling tables because we didn't need to design so much, but what we needed was to accumulate things and then see how they get combined. So these are some examples of pieces used in the house, balconies and objects, and then an example of mistakes or coincidences, another part of aesthetics that we really treasure. For example, when we made this wall with the bricks, we hadn't decided which doors we will use, so we left a big space, and then what was left became a shelf. And again, a mirror project celebrating the relationships of this particular project. The house was the totems, which talked about the sequence of material experiences you meet through the house. Similar case. So I'm going to end with the new architecture school in Marseille, which we were lucky to win the competition for and build, together with 3 more offices. So NPDG from Paris, Marion Bernard from Marseille, and Jacques Lacan, also from Paris. Now, these buildings looks very different from everything else I showed you just before, and that's why I thought it's maybe good to include it. It's a huge building at the center of Marseille. It comprises 3 schools, actually, architecture, landscape, and urbanism, in a very small plot. And what I wanted to talk about here is the fact that the building was designed through its social spaces again. So the same strategy that you saw in the apartments, this is the Pompeia plan, where again you see that there's a kind of defined open central space, and then program kind of more freely, informally comes around it and fills the site. And so what we made sure was to design these social spaces, circulations, but also verandas, covered balconies, the rooftops, etc., etc. So again, I remind you of the old Athenian houses situation, when it was all about, again, the courtyard, the shared space, the open space, and how social life is promoted, and the aesthetics of the project is the result of that process of prioritizing that social space. And to end, a picture of our A+U publication, because it's interesting always for me to look at the parallels between the scales, the opposite scales, city or an object or interior, and how the same logic, the same principles happen in both. Thank you.